Hello and welcome to Miss Revell's Sewing Bee. I've just been sorting out my pins and to be honest, they're in a bit of a mess. In sewing, we use pins to temporarily hold bits of fabric together while we stitch. They're super sharp, so always keep fingers away from the pointy ends. As you can see, mine are in a total mess. So today we're going to make a pin cushion. A pin cushion is just a place to keep your pins while you're not using them, to keep them safe and to stop them rolling away. Here's an example of one. It's nice and squishy, hence the name cushion, and it's got a few pins stuck in the top for safekeeping. I want to come up with my own design today. Ooh, what do I really like? Aha! I love fruit. And luckily, I have my fruit bowl here. So let's have a look. I could do a lime, too green. Lemon, too yellow. An orange, it's too orange. An apple, one of my favourites, that's perfect. And this is what your pin cushion is going to look like. You've got the main body is your red felt, 2 leaves at the top, and we're going to use whip stitch to sew around the edges. To make your pin cushion, all you need is some fabric. I've chosen to use felt, which is probably the best fabric to use for this because it's quite thick and quite tough. So I've got a red for the main shape of my apple and then a little bit of green to make some leaves. Don't worry if you don't have felt, you still can use fabric that you can find around your house. You also need a needle, some thread, 2 pins, some old card to make a stencil with, a pencil, some stuffing, or you can use cotton wool instead, and some scissors. Remember, if you need a bit of extra time or you're struggling with something, then you can always pause the video or rewind it to have a little look and a practice. Your first job is to cut your thread. You're gonna cut it not too long, but also not too short either, just somewhere in the middle of those two. Once you've done that, pop your needle on the top and tie your knot in the bottom. If you're not sure how to do either of those things, you can have a little look at basic session 1 and 2, where I show you in a bit more detail how to do those things. Once you've done that, you can set them aside, ready for step 2. For step 2, you need to get your old piece of card ready to make a stencil. We're going to use the stencil to draw around on our fabric to make the shape of our apple. So first, you need to draw the shape of an apple onto the card. Now I've done it nice and big, but not too big. It needs to be able to fit in the palm of your hand like this. But we also don't want it too small, otherwise you won't be able to fit any pins on it. Once you've drawn your apple shape, you then need to draw a leaf shape onto another piece of card, because we're going to have an apple and then 2 leaves at the top. Once you've drawn them both, you're going to cut around them. Next, we're going to make 2 cutouts of this apple shape for our pin cushion. The first job is to draw around your stencil. So I placed it at the side of my piece of fabric so as not to waste any. If I put it in the middle, that's wasting all this fabric either side. So I put it quite close to the edge like this, but making sure that all the parts of the stencil are still on the fabric, not hanging off like this. There we go. So I'm going to hold it on with one hand, and with my pencil I'm going to draw carefully around it. You can always ask a grown-up to help you with this bit if you find it a bit tricky. Once you've drawn around it, put it on the fabric again and draw around another one. Once you've drawn around them, you're ready to cut carefully around your pencil line. Step 4 is really similar to step 3. You need your fabric for your leaf and your leaf stencil. So I'm not going to put it right in the middle of my material, I put it towards the edge. And we need to draw around this twice. Once you've drawn around your shape twice, you just need to cut out both leaves. To complete this step, you're going to need just one of your apple cutouts, both of your leaves, and the needle and thread that you prepared earlier. You're going to take one of the leaves and put it on your apple shape, somewhere in the middle towards the top. Now I haven't put it at the top here, I put it down a little bit, so that because I'm going to stitch here, if I stitch here, then you can still see the red apple beneath it. So then I need to use my crab claws to pinch that leaf into place where I want it to go. Then with my needle and thread, I'm going to start from the back to do a basic stitch. And I'm going to pull till I feel the knot tugging at the back. Then I don't want an enormous stitch here, and I also don't want a teeny tiny stitch. I just want a medium-sized stitch going down. I pull till it's against the fabric. I'm going to do that one more time. I can go over the stitch that I've already done to make it look really neat. Up and down. Then take your other leaf, and I want it to overlap this leaf. So it's going to go over the top of that stitch that we've done already, like this. Crab claws. Hold it in place. Then starting at the back again, going up, pull it tight, and another little stitch. Pull down, until it's on the fabric, and one more time, try and get it in the same place as your first stitch, and down. When you've stitched on your leaves, you can turn your apple over. You're going to cut so that there's a little bit of left over here. You should have your 2 strands, so you're going to pull them apart and tie a knot to secure those leaves on. You can always ask a grown-up to help you with this bit if you're not sure how to tie that knot. I'm going to do it twice to make it extra super duper secure, and then cut the ends off to make it neat. And there you go, your leaves are sewn on. Now we're going to be using those 2 pins that you found earlier. We're going to be pinning this side of the apple to this side of the apple so that they match up exactly. So this side with the leaves on the front has to be facing outwards. The bits that you want showing have to be facing outwards. So let's line them up. I've got my leaves on this side and the nice side of my apple on this side. And you can see that the edges match up almost exactly. Then we're going to use our pins just to pin them together while we're sewing, because it makes it so much easier when you're sewing if it's pinned together for you. So you take your pin holding this end, not the sharp end. The sharp end goes up this side, and then it's not going to go all the way through, just a little bit. Then you go across and then down to the back. So on the front it looks like this, and on the back it looks like this. You're then going to do exactly the same on the other side. We go up, over, down. Okay, so they're pinned together, ready to sew. When we start sewing in the next step, then we don't want to sew all the way around, because we need to leave a small gap so that we can put our stuffing or cotton wool into the pin cushion, which we're then going to sew up at the end. So we need to mark where that gap is going to go. So somewhere at the side of your apple, you're going to make a little tiny line in your pencil here, perhaps. Then you need to leave a gap that's about 2 centimeters long, and you're going to put another line where that is. So here is where my gap is going to be. I'm going to sew from this line here all the way round until I reach this line. Then we'll have a little gap in the middle ready to put our stuffing in. Before you complete this step, you need to do step 1 again by cutting your thread, popping your needle on it and tying the knot at the end, because we're going to be doing our whip stitch to fix the 2 sides of the apple together now. I'm going to start at this dot here, this line here, and I'm going to go this way around until I reach this line here, because I need to leave this open so that we can put our cotton wool stuffing in the middle. So that my knot doesn't show on the outside, I'm going to not go right from the back here, but I'm going to sort of dip in between the fabric here, so that the knot is going to end up in the middle of the 2 pieces of fabric. There we we go, I put it through. And there, my knot is resting in the middle of the two pieces of fabric, so we won't be able to see it at the end. Then, when you've done that, we're going to be doing our whip stitch. Whip stitch can be a little bit tricky, so if you're finding it hard, you can always go back to basic session 4 to have a little practice. So I'm on the front of my apple. I need to do a spiral round. I'm going to go over the edge here, and I'm going to come up again through the back. Now I've left a little gap between this stitch here and this one. There's a small gap in between. I'm going to pull up and pull tight to make my first stitch here. I'll show you one more time. We're going to go over the edge this way, underneath, leaving a little gap when your needle comes up. Pull up to make your second stitch. So keep doing that until you get to the leaves here, and I'll show you how to do that tricky part. Okay, I've done my stitches from my line up to here. Now we've hit the leaves. I don't want my stitches coming through onto those green leaves. So you just need to carefully and gently just fold them forward so that you can see the red part at the back. You're going to do the same whip stitch, so you're going to go over and up. But you just have to be super mega careful that you're not going through all the way to the green side, but that you're coming up and just putting your needle through the red parts. I'll show you again. Go over, under, leaving a small gap, but don't go all the way through to the green. Keep it folded forward, just the red part. Stop right there! So you've reached the other dot just here on your apple to show where the gap is, where we're going to start stuffing your apple. Next, we're going to stuff our apple with the stuffing or the cotton wool that you found earlier. You need to leave your thread and your needle attached to your apple, but you need to take your pins out before you start stuffing and just put them carefully to one side. Now, we can't fit all of this stuffing into that small hole, so you just need to take a little bit at a time and carefully push it in. You can even use a pencil, the end of a pencil, to help you to get that in, just like this. To help you get it right into all of the corners. completely filled my apple with stuffing. So now I just need to continue with my whip stitch until I reach this point. Nearly finished your pincushion. You've done all the stitches around the outside and you should be here with your thread still attached. So what you need to do now is just do a very small running stitch going to the side. So we're not going over this time. We're just going to go just the smallest stitch you can to the side, until your thread is at the back, and that's when we're going to tie a little knot to secure the thread. So I'm going to cut my needle off, split my remaining thread into 2 little strands, and then tie a knot. If you're not sure how to tie the knot, you can always ask a grown-up to help you. I'm going to do it again. And then I just need to cut those strands off without cutting the knot, as close as I can to the apple. There. And ta-da! You have finished your very first project. Ah, that's looking so much better, isn't it? So much neater. Now I hope you've enjoyed making your pincushion today and that it's going to be useful for your future projects. Bye for now.